Commander Jake Sullivan stood at the observation deck and watched the twin suns of Kepler 442c paint the rocky landscape in shades of orange and red. 3 months had passed since they established the mining outpost, and the work was going better than anyone expected. The rare earth elements they were pulling from the ground would power human ships for decades to come. Dr. Lisa Martinez walked up beside him holding her datapad. She had been running scans of the outer system for weeks now, and something was bothering her. The energy readings she was getting made no sense according to everything they knew about this solar system. "Jake, we need to talk about these readings," she said, pointing at her screen. "There are massive energy signatures moving through the asteroid belt, but our long-range sensors show nothing there." Sullivan turned to look at the data. He had been a military officer for 15 years before taking this assignment, and he knew when something felt wrong. The readings looked like ship signatures, but that was impossible. No human vessels were scheduled to arrive for another 6 months. "Could be solar flares or magnetic interference," he said, but his voice showed he did not believe it. "Keep monitoring and let me know if anything changes." Martinez nodded and walked back to her lab. Sullivan knew she was one of the best scientists in the colony fleet, and if she was worried, then he should be too. He made a mental note to check their defense systems later. Down in the mining pit, Sergeant Tony Blake was overseeing the extraction work. The big machines pulled tons of ore from the ground every day, and the workers had fallen into a steady rhythm. Blake had served 3 tours in the outer colonies before joining this mission, and he liked the peaceful work. It was a nice change from watching for raiders and hostile aliens. Engineer Katie Johnson was in the power plant checking the fusion reactors. At 26, she was the youngest member of the team, but she knew more about power systems than anyone else on the planet. The reactors were running at peak efficiency and producing more energy than the outpost needed. She had been thinking about ways to use the extra power for better mining equipment. "Hey, Katie," called out pilot Rick Davis as he entered the plant. "I just got back from the supply run to the orbital station and something weird happened up there." Johnson looked up from her console. Davis was their only pilot, and he made regular trips to the automated supply station that orbited the planet. He knew space around this world better than anyone. "The station's communication array was completely dead," Davis continued. "No signals going out and no signals coming in. It's been like that for at least 2 weeks based on the error logs." This made Johnson pause. The supply station was their link to the rest of human space. If it was not working, then they were completely cut off from Earth and the other colonies. She thought about the implications of being alone out here. "Did you try to fix it?" she asked. "I'm a pilot, not a communications expert," Davis replied. "But I did notice something else. There are chunks of metal floating near the station that look like they came from a ship. Fresh debris, too, based on how it was drifting." Johnson felt a chill run down her spine. If there was ship debris near their communication station, then something bad had happened. She decided to tell Commander Sullivan about this right away. Meanwhile, Dr. Martinez was in her lab studying the energy readings more carefully. The signatures were definitely artificial, and they were moving in formation. Whatever was out there was not natural, and it was big. She pulled up the colony database and searched for similar energy patterns. The results made her stomach drop. The signatures matched those recorded during alien attacks on human colonies over the past year. 12 outposts had gone silent after reporting similar readings. The pattern was always the same. Strange energy signatures appeared in the outer system, then all communication stopped. She grabbed her datapad and ran to find Sullivan. This was not a drill or a false alarm. Something was coming for them, and based on what happened to the other colonies, they did not have much time. Sullivan was in the command center reviewing supply reports when Martinez burst through the door. Her face was pale and her hands were shaking as she showed him the data comparison. "Jake, these readings match the signatures from the colony attacks," she said quickly. "Whatever hit those other outposts is here in our system." Sullivan studied the data and felt his military training kick in. The pattern was clear and the threat was real. He activated the outpost's alert system and called all department heads to the command Center immediately. Within minutes, Blake, Johnson, and Davis had assembled along with the other senior staff. Sullivan showed them the energy readings and explained what Martinez had discovered. The room went quiet as everyone understood what this meant. "How long do we have?" asked Blake. "Based on the movement patterns, maybe 6 hours before they reach orbit," Martinez replied. "But that assumes they maintain current speed." Sullivan looked around the room at his team. They were miners and scientists, not soldiers. The outpost had basic defense systems, but nothing that could handle a serious attack. Their only weapons were mining charges and some small arms for protection against wildlife. "We need to assume the worst," Sullivan said. "If these are the same aliens that hit the other colonies, then they are not coming here to trade." "Everyone needs to start preparing for a fight," Johnson spoke up first. "I can modify the mining equipment to create defensive positions." "The excavators can dig trenches and bunkers quickly," Blake nodded. "I can distribute weapons and set up defensive positions around key facilities." "We have enough small arms for about half the crew," Davis added. "The shuttle can be used for reconnaissance and maybe evacuation if needed." Martinez was still studying her datapad. "I'm picking up more signatures now?" "Jake, I think we are looking at a full invasion fleet." Sullivan felt the weight of command settle on his shoulders. 47 people were depending on him to keep them alive against an enemy they knew nothing about. The smart thing would be to evacuate, but their ship was not big enough to carry everyone, and they had nowhere to run. "We make our stand here," he decided. "This is our home now, and we are not giving it up without a fight." As if responding to his words, the long-range sensors began picking up massive objects dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. Martinez counted 15 distinct signatures, all moving toward their planet. The quiet time was over. The alien fleet moved through space like a dark cloud blotting out the stars. Admiral Zektar stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched the human outpost grow larger on his tactical display. This would be easy like all the others had been. Humans were weak and gave up quickly when faced with superior force. Down on the planet, Commander Sullivan watched the approaching ships through the outpost's main telescope. Each vessel was 3 times larger than any human ship he had ever seen, and their dark hulls absorbed light instead of reflecting it. The fleet moved in perfect formation, showing military discipline and experience. "Incoming transmission," announced Captain Steve Morrison from the communications station. Morrison had joined the team just last month as a security officer and was handling radio duties while they prepared defenses. The main screen flickered and showed the face of Admiral Zektar. His species looked roughly humanoid, but with gray skin and large black eyes that seemed to see everything. When he spoke, his voice was cold and mechanical. "Human settlement, you are now under the authority of the hegemony. You will surrender your weapons and submit to processing as labor units. Resistance will result in total extermination. You have 1 planetary rotation to comply." The transmission ended, leaving the command center in silence. Sullivan looked around at his team and saw fear in their eyes, but also something else. These people had worked hard to build this outpost, and they were not going to give it up easily. "What do you think, Jake?" asked Dr. Martinez. "Should we try to negotiate?" Sullivan thought about the 12 colonies that had gone silent. None of them had been heard from again after similar ultimatums. The aliens were not interested in negotiation. They wanted slaves or corpses. "Morrison, open a channel to their flagship," Sullivan ordered. The alien admiral appeared on screen again, expecting to hear surrender terms. Instead, Sullivan stood straight and looked directly into those black eyes. "Admiral, this is Commander Jake Sullivan of the Terran Colonial Authority. I have a message for you and your fleet." "Come and take it." He cut the transmission before the alien could respond. The command center erupted in nervous chatter, but Sullivan held up his hand for silence. "Everyone knows what needs to be done. We have maybe 18 hours before they start landing troops. Let's make sure they regret coming here." The next few hours passed in frantic preparation. Engineer Johnson used the mining excavators to dig defensive trenches around the main facilities. The big machines could move tons of earth quickly, and Soon, the outpost was surrounded by a network of bunkers and fighting positions. Mechanic Danny Wright worked with Sergeant Blake to modify the mining charges into improvised explosives. The charges were designed to break up rock formations, but they would work just as well against alien soldiers. Wright had served in the Colonial Marines before becoming a mechanic, and he knew how to make things explode. Pilot Davis took the shuttle up for reconnaissance flights and reported back on alien movements. The fleet had taken position in high orbit and was launching smaller ships toward the surface. The invasion was beginning. Dr. Martinez studied the alien transmission, looking for any clues about their technology or weaknesses. The signal used standard human communication protocols, which meant they had been watching human colonies for some time. This was not their first attack. As the sun set, Admiral Zektar prepared his assault force. 200 of his best soldiers would land at the human outpost and eliminate any resistance. The humans had refused surrender, so they would all be killed as an example to other colonies. The first wave of alien dropships broke through the atmosphere like falling meteors. Their hulls glowed red-hot from re-entry, but the advanced materials did not burn up. Sullivan watched them descend and felt his heart rate increase. This was really happening. All units to defensive positions, he ordered over the radio. Remember, we know this ground better than they do. Use that advantage. The alien ships landed in a rough circle around the outpost, kicking up clouds of dust and debris. The cargo bays opened and hegemony soldiers poured out. They moved with military precision, carrying weapons that hummed with energy. Blake had positioned his people in the trenches and bunkers with clear fields of fire. The aliens advanced in formation, expecting little resistance from a mining operation. They were about to learn that humans did not give up easily. "Wait for my signal," Blake whispered into his radio. "Let them get close." The alien soldiers moved across the open ground between their ships and the outpost. Their armor was sleek and black, making them hard to see in the fading light. They carried energy rifles that could punch through most human defenses. When the aliens were 50 meters away, Blake gave the order to fire. The night exploded with muzzle flashes and the crack of human weapons. Several aliens went down immediately, their armor not as effective as they had expected. The aliens returned fire with their energy weapons, sending bolts of blue light across the battlefield. The shots burned through rock and metal, but the humans were well protected in their trenches. Johnson had designed the defensive positions to deflect energy attacks. Wright triggered the first mining charge as a group of aliens tried to flank the main bunker. The explosion sent bodies flying and left a crater 10 meters wide. The surviving aliens pulled back, looking confused. This was not how previous battles had gone. Davis brought the shuttle in low, strafing the alien positions with the ship's small guns. The aliens had not expected air support, and several of their groups were caught in the open. Their return fire damaged the shuttle, but Davis managed to land it safely behind the human lines. The battle raged for 2 hours, with neither side gaining a clear advantage. The aliens had superior weapons and armor, but the humans knew the terrain and fought with desperate courage. Every alien advance was met with explosions and gunfire from unexpected directions. Admiral Zektar watched the battle from orbit and grew increasingly frustrated. His forces should have overwhelmed the human outpost within minutes. Instead, they were taking heavy casualties and making little progress. These humans were different from the others somehow. He decided to send reinforcements. 500 more soldiers would land at dawn and crush the remaining resistance. No human colony had ever lasted more than 1 day against hegemony forces. Back on the surface, Sullivan moved between the defensive positions, checking on his people. Several had been wounded, but none killed so far. The aliens had lost at least 30 soldiers based on the bodies scattered around the outpost. "How are we doing on ammunition?" he asked Blake. "About 60% remaining," Blake replied. "The mining charges are working better than expected. Their armor can't handle the explosive force." Johnson reported from the power plant that the reactors were still running and providing power to their defensive systems. Martinez was monitoring alien communications and had managed to decode some of their tactical frequencies. "They are calling for more troops," she announced. Something about human resistance being stronger than predicted. Sullivan smiled grimly. The aliens had expected easy prey, but humans had been fighting wars for thousands of years. They would learn that some species do not go quietly into slavery. As the first alien reinforcements began landing, Sullivan knew the real test was just beginning. The alien reinforcements landed at dawn, bringing the enemy force to over 500 soldiers. Admiral Zektar was confident that this would end the human resistance once and for all. He had never seen a species fight so hard for so little, but it would not matter in the end. Commander Sullivan watched the new landing ships through his binoculars and counted the troops pouring out. The humans were badly outnumbered, but they had been busy during the night. Dr. Martinez had made a discovery that might change everything. "Jake, you need to see this," Martinez called from her makeshift lab in the bunker. She had been studying pieces of alien armor and weapons recovered from the battlefield. Under her microscope, the alien technology looked far more advanced than human equipment, but it had one critical flaw. Their armor and shields operate on a very specific frequency band, she explained, pointing at her readings. If we can generate an electromagnetic pulse at exactly 2.7 terahertz, their systems will overload and shut down. Sullivan looked at the data, trying to understand what she was saying. "Can we generate that kind of pulse with our equipment?" "Katie thinks she can modify the mining laser array," Martinez replied. "It would drain our entire power grid, but it might work." Engineer Johnson had been working on this problem all night. The mining lasers were designed to cut through solid rock using focused energy beams. If she could modify the frequency generators, she might be able to create the pulse Martinez needed. "I can do it, but we only get one shot," Johnson said. "After that, the system will be completely burned out." Corporal Amy Chun had been monitoring alien communications from her position in the radio bunker. She was picking up chatter about human defenses being stronger than expected and requests for orbital bombardment support. The aliens were getting frustrated. Dr. Ben Parker was treating wounded humans in the medical bunker. Parker had joined the colony as a doctor, but his background in chemistry was proving useful. He had been working with the mining chemicals to create something that might help even the odds. "I can make an aerosol compound using the industrial solvents," Parker explained to Sullivan. "It won't kill them, but it should cause severe respiratory distress if they breathe it." Tech specialist Carl Lewis was working on another project. He had been studying the alien communication equipment and figured out how to intercept their tactical frequencies. More importantly, he thought he could send false signals to confuse their coordination. "If I can hack into their network, I might be able to feed them wrong information about our positions," Lewis said. "Make them think we are retreating when we are actually advancing." Sullivan looked around at his team and felt a surge of pride. These were not soldiers, but they were thinking and fighting like veterans. Every person was contributing something unique to their survival. The alien attack began at noon with a massive artillery barrage from their ships. Energy bolts rained down on the human positions, destroying several bunkers and setting fires across the outpost. The aliens had decided to soften up the defenses before sending in ground troops, but the humans were no longer in the positions being bombarded. During the night, they had dug new tunnels connecting all their defensive points. When the aliens attacked, they found empty bunkers and abandoned trenches. Now, Sullivan ordered and Johnson activated the modified mining array, the electromagnetic pulse swept across the battlefield, invisible to human eyes, but devastating to alien technology. Hundreds of enemy soldiers suddenly found their armor and weapons shutting down. Their shields flickered and died, leaving them exposed and vulnerable. The humans emerged from their hidden positions and opened fire on the confused aliens. Without their advanced technology, the enemy soldiers were just targets in expensive suits. The mining charges Wright had planted exploded in sequence, creating chaos in the alien ranks. Lieutenant Grace Adams had positioned herself in a sniper nest on top of the processing plant. She was picking off alien officers with careful shots from her hunting rifle. Each shot dropped a commander and made the enemy formations more disorganized. Sergeant Pete Collins was leading a team through the tunnel system, carrying improvised explosives. They emerged behind alien lines and began destroying the landing ships. Without their transport, the enemy soldiers would be stranded on the planet. Medic Julie Scott was moving between wounded humans, keeping everyone in the fight. Her medical training was saving lives, and her encouragement was keeping morale high. She had never expected to be treating battle wounds when she joined a mining operation. The aliens tried to regroup, but their communication system was being jammed by Lewis, and their tactical coordination was falling apart. Many of their soldiers were choking on Parker's chemical compound, which had been released through the Outpost ventilation system. Admiral Zektar watched his ground forces being destroyed and could not believe what he was seeing. These humans were using primitive weapons and mining equipment, but they were winning. His advanced soldiers were being outfought by a handful of colonists. He ordered the remaining ships to begin orbital bombardment of the entire outpost. If his troops could not take the facility, then he would destroy it completely. The humans had fought well, but this would end their resistance permanently. The first orbital strikes hit the outer buildings, turning them into craters of melted metal and rock. Sullivan realized that the aliens were willing to destroy the planet rather than admit defeat. His people had won the ground battle, but they could not survive an orbital bombardment. "We need to get off the surface," he told his team over the radio. "Head for the deep mining tunnels." The humans retreated into the underground tunnel system they had been expanding for months. The tunnels went down hundreds of meters into solid rock where orbital strikes could not reach them. But they could not stay underground forever. Martinez was studying the alien fleet positions on her portable scanner. Most of the ships had moved into low orbit to support the bombardment, which put them within range of the mining facility's heavy equipment. "Jake, what if we could get aboard one of their ships?" she suggested. "If we could capture their technology, we might be able to turn it against them." Sullivan thought about this idea. It was completely insane, but so was everything else they had done. The aliens expected them to hide underground until they could be bombed into submission. They would not expect the humans to attack upward. "Johnson, can you modify the ore transport system to launch people instead of rocks?" he asked. Johnson looked at the massive pneumatic tubes that shot processed ore up to the orbital collection point. With some modifications, they could probably launch humans too, though the ride would be rough. "It would be like being shot out of a cannon," she warned. "But it might work." Davis had been studying the alien ship formations from his hiding spot near the landing field. Several of the smaller vessels had landed to provide ground support, and their crews had deployed to help with the battle. The ships were lightly guarded. "If we could capture one of those fighters, we might be able to get to the main fleet," Davis said. "I think I can fly anything with wings or thrusters." Sullivan made his decision. They had come this far by doing the impossible, and they were not going to stop now. The aliens wanted to crush a human outpost, but they were about to learn that humans did not crush easily. "Everyone listen up," he announced over the radio. "We are going to capture their ships and take this fight to space. It is crazy, but crazy seems to be working for us. The plan was insane, but it was also their only chance." Admiral Zektar was losing his patience and his reputation. The human outpost should have fallen within hours, but somehow these primitive colonists had destroyed most of his ground forces. His superiors in the hegemony were demanding results, and he was running out of explanations. He made a decision that would haunt him forever. Every remaining soldier in his fleet would be deployed to the planet's surface. 3,000 of the hegemony's finest warriors would crush this human resistance, once and for all. There would be no survivors to tell the story of their defiance. Deep underground, Commander Sullivan felt the vibrations as more alien ships landed on the surface. The orbital bombardment had stopped, which meant the enemy was preparing for a final ground assault. His people were exhausted and running low on ammunition, but they were not ready to give up. "How many do you think they have up there now?" asked Sergeant Blake as he checked his weapon. "Doctor." Martinez was monitoring the alien communications from her portable equipment. The chatter had increased dramatically, and she was picking up references to a final assault. "Based on the ship signatures, I would guess at least 3,000 soldiers," she replied. The number hit everyone like a physical blow. 47 humans against 3,000 aliens was not a battle, it was a massacre. But Sullivan had seen. His people do impossible things over the past 2 days, and he was not ready to surrender. Engineer Johnson had been working on modifications to the mining facility even while hiding underground. The entire outpost was now wired with explosives and traps that could be triggered remotely. If the aliens wanted the facility, they would have to pay a terrible price for it. "The whole place is one big bomb now," she reported. "I can bring down?" Every building and tunnel with the press of a button. Dr. Parker had been mixing chemicals in his improvised laboratory, creating compounds that would make the alien advance as difficult as possible. The industrial mining chemicals were toxic to most life forms, and he had found ways to weaponize them. Tech specialist Lewis had managed to hack deeper into the alien communication network and was now feeding false information directly to their command structure. He was telling different units that other groups had been destroyed or that humans were retreating to positions where no one was actually located. "Their coordination is falling apart," Lewis reported. "I have them shooting at shadows and attacking empty buildings." Pilot Davis had been studying the captured alien fighter he had hidden in the mining pit. The controls were different from human ships, but the basic principles seemed similar. He thought he could fly it well enough to reach the orbital fleet. Lieutenant Adams had been scouting the surface through ventilation shafts and maintenance tunnels. The aliens had set up a massive staging area near their landing site and were preparing equipment for a final assault. She counted dozens of heavy weapons and armored vehicles. Sergeant Collins had been preparing special surprises for the alien advance. The mining tunnels were now filled with explosives that would collapse entire sections when the enemy tried to pursue retreating humans. Every step forward would cost them dearly. Medic Scott was treating the wounded and preparing medical supplies for what everyone knew would be the final battle. Her hands were steady, but her eyes showed the strain of keeping people alive under impossible conditions. Corporal Chun was coordinating communications between all the scattered human positions. Her radio network was keeping everyone connected and informed even as they prepared for what might be their last stand. As the third day dawned, the aliens began their final assault. Waves of soldiers advanced on the outpost from all directions, supported by heavy weapons and armored vehicles. The bombardment from space had resumed to provide cover for the ground forces, but the humans were no longer where the aliens expected them to be. The tunnel network had been expanded into a three-dimensional maze that allowed defenders to appear anywhere and disappear just as quickly. What looked like a simple mining outpost had become a fortress designed by people who knew every meter of ground. The first alien units to enter the facility triggered Johnson's traps and found themselves buried under tons of collapsing rock and metal. The explosions echoed through the tunnels as entire sections of the outpost came down on top of the invaders. Parker's chemical weapons turned the air toxic, forcing the aliens to rely on their environmental suits. But many of their systems had been damaged in previous battles, and the poisonous atmosphere began taking a toll on their effectiveness. Adams picked off alien commanders from hidden sniper positions, causing confusion and panic in their ranks. Every shot was carefully aimed to create maximum disruption in their command structure. Without proper leadership, the alien formations began to break apart. Collins led teams of humans through the tunnels carrying explosives and ambushing alien patrols. The enemy had superior firepower, but they were fighting in an environment designed by their opponents. Every corridor was a potential trap, and every room could become a tomb. Blake coordinated the defensive efforts, using his military experience to make the most of their limited resources. His people were outnumbered, but they were fighting for their homes and their lives. That gave them an advantage no alien could understand. The battle raged through the morning with the aliens, making costly progress through the outpost. Every meter of ground cost them dozens of soldiers, and their advance was slowing as casualties mounted. The humans were making them pay for every inch. Admiral Zektar watched the carnage from orbit and realized he had made a terrible mistake. His forces were being destroyed piecemeal by an enemy that refused to fight in the open. These humans used tactics he had never encountered and weapons he had never seen. He made another fateful decision. if his ground forces could not root out the humans, then he would use orbital strikes on his own positions. Better to lose his own soldiers than admit defeat to a primitive species. The hegemony's reputation was more important than individual lives. The orbital bombardment began hitting areas where his own troops were fighting. Alien soldiers were vaporized alongside human defenders as their admiral chose victory over the lives of his subordinates. The tactic was brutal but effective in driving humans out of their protected positions. Sullivan realized what was happening and knew they were running out of options. The alien commander was willing to sacrifice his own forces to achieve victory. That level of ruthlessness could not be matched by desperate colonists fighting for survival. "We need to get off this planet," he told his team over the radio. "The alien commander has gone completely insane," but there was nowhere to run. Their shuttle had been destroyed in the bombing, and the alien fleet controlled all orbital space. They were trapped on a world that was being systematically destroyed by an enemy who had lost all reason. That was when Davis spoke up from his position near the captured alien fighter. "Jake, I think I can get this ship working. If we can reach their fleet, maybe we can end this." It was their only chance. A handful of humans in a stolen alien ship against the most powerful fleet in the galaxy. The odds were impossible, but they had been beating impossible odds for 3 days now. Sullivan made the decision that would determine whether humanity had a future in this part of the galaxy. They would take the fight to the enemy fleet, and either win everything or lose it all in the attempt. "Everyone who can fight meets at the fighter in 10 minutes, he announced. "We are going to finish this." Pilot Davis had never flown anything like the alien fighter, but desperation made him learn quickly. The controls responded to thought as much as touch, and the ship's systems integrated with his nervous system in ways that felt both alien and natural. Within minutes, he understood why the hegemony had conquered so many worlds. Commander Sullivan climbed into the co-pilot seat while Dr. Martinez and Engineer Johnson squeezed into the rear compartments. The fighter was designed for a single alien pilot, but humans were smaller and could fit where the original designers never intended passengers to go. "Everyone else needs to get as deep underground as possible," Sullivan ordered over the radio. "If this does not work, then you are the last hope for humanity on this world." The alien fighter lifted off from the mining pit using technology that made human ships look like steam engines. Davis felt the ship respond to his thoughts and realized that the neural interface was reading his intentions directly. He wanted to reach the command ship, and the fighter began plotting the most efficient course. The flight to the orbital fleet took only minutes, but every second felt like an hour. The alien ships hung in space like dark predators waiting to devour the planet below. Their hulls were scarred from battle, but their weapons were still fully operational. "There," Martinez pointed at the largest vessel in the center of the formation. "That has to be the command ship." The flagship was twice the size of the other vessels and covered with sensor arrays and communication equipment. Admiral Zektar was in there somewhere directing the destruction of the human outpost. Sullivan intended to have a personal conversation with him about the rules of war. Davis used the fighters' stealth systems to approach the command ship without being detected. The neural interface showed him weaknesses in the enemy's sensor grid and guided him through gaps in their defensive coverage. The aliens never suspected that one of their own ships had been captured. The fighter docked with the command ship using automated systems that recognized the craft as friendly. Davis wondered how many other species had tried this same desperate gambit and failed. Today would determine if humans were different from all the others. They moved through the alien ship's corridors using the layout information stored in the fighter's computer. The vessel was larger than any human structure and filled with technology that was centuries ahead of Earth science. But technology could not replace the will to fight. Johnson had brought several mining charges adapted for use in zero gravity. The explosives were crude compared to alien weapons, but they would be effective against internal ship systems. She began placing them at key structural points while the others moved toward the bridge. Martinez was recording everything she saw with her portable scanner. If they survived this mission, the information would be invaluable for human defense against future alien attacks. Every detail about their technology and tactics might save human lives someday. The command bridge was at the center of the ship, protected by multiple layers of security and armor. But the aliens had never considered that their enemies might already be inside their defenses. The security systems recognized the human team as authorized personnel based on their arrival in a hegemony fighter. Admiral Zektar stood at his command station watching the orbital bombardment of the human outpost. His forces on the ground had been reduced to less than 1,000 soldiers, but they were finally making progress. Soon the last human resistance would be crushed, and he could report victory to his superiors. That was when Sullivan walked onto the bridge carrying a human rifle and wearing the expression of someone who had nothing left to lose. The alien crew turned to stare at the impossible sight of humans aboard their most secure vessel. "Admiral Zektar, I believe we have some unfinished business," Sullivan said as he aimed his weapon at the alien commander. The bridge erupted in alarm calls and weapon fire as the alien crew tried to respond to the human intrusion. But Johnson's explosives began detonating throughout the ship, causing systems failures and structural damage. The lights flickered and gravity fluctuated as critical systems went offline. Martinez had connected her scanner to the ship's main computer and was downloading everything she could access. The database contained information about hegemony military forces and the locations of human colonies they planned to attack. She was stealing the intelligence that could save humanity. Davis fought his way back to the fighter bay while carrying the information Martinez had gathered. He needed to get the data off the ship before the aliens could stop them. The fighter was their only way home and their only way to warn other human colonies on the bridge. Sullivan faced Admiral Zektar in single combat while the ship died around them. The alien was larger and stronger, but Sullivan had 3 days of rage driving him forward. Every human who had died defending the outpost demanded justice. "Your species will be extinct within a generation," Zektar snarled as they struggled for control of a plasma weapon. "The hegemony has the resources to destroy every human world." "Maybe," Sullivan replied as he gained the upper hand. "But we will make you pay for everyone." The Admiral's death triggered automatic systems throughout the fleet as his ship transmitted final orders to the other vessels. But Johnson had corrupted the computer network and the messages contained false information about human reinforcements arriving in the system. Several alien ships began retreating immediately based on the fabricated intelligence. Others moved to defensive positions expecting an attack from a human fleet that did not exist. The coordination that had made them so effective was breaking down due to false information and the loss of their commander. Davis managed to reach the fighter and began the startup sequence as alien security forces converged on the docking bay. The ship's neural interface was damaged from the explosions, but it responded to his desperate need to escape. The fighter launched just as the command ship began breaking apart. Martinez had downloaded terabytes of alien intelligence, including star charts showing the locations of hegemony bases and planned invasion routes. The information was beyond valuable. It was the key to human survival against a vastly superior enemy. Johnson's explosives had done more damage than anyone expected. The command ship was now a drifting wreck, and 3 other vessels in the fleet had been damaged by debris. The aliens were discovering that humans could be just as ruthless as any species in the galaxy, but Admiral Zektar had programmed one final order before his death. The remaining ships would destroy the planet rather than allow any humans to escape with intelligence about hegemony operations. Better to glass the world than let the information reach other human colonies. The orbital bombardment intensified as every surviving alien ship focused their weapons on the planet's surface. The mining outpost disappeared in a series of nuclear fireballs that could be seen from orbit. But the humans who had stayed behind were deep underground in the mining tunnels where even atomic fire could not reach them. Davis piloted the stolen fighter through the chaos of the disintegrating fleet while dodging weapons fire from the remaining alien ships. The neural interface was guiding him toward the edge of the system where he could jump to hyperspace and escape with the stolen intelligence, but Sullivan had other plans. He was studying the fighter's weapon systems and learning how to use alien technology against its creators. The ship was small, but it carried enough firepower to damage much larger vessels if used correctly. "Rick, bring us around for another attack run," Sullivan ordered. "We are not leaving until every alien ship in this system is destroyed." "Jake, that's suicide," Davis replied. "We have the intelligence Martinez downloaded. We need to get this information to other human colonies." Sullivan looked back at the burning planet where 43 of his people were trapped underground. He had promised to protect them, and he was not going to abandon them now. The aliens had chosen to fight a war of extermination, and humans would show them what that really meant. "No alien leaves this system alive," he said with cold determination. "If they want to play by those rules, then we will finish the game." The fighter dove toward the nearest alien cruiser using speed and maneuverability to avoid defensive fire. Sullivan targeted the ship's reactor core with a sustained plasma burst that overloaded their containment systems. The explosion lit up space like a small star. Martinez was still connected to the alien database through her portable equipment. She had discovered something that changed everything about their situation. The Hegemony fleet had not reported their position to higher command because they expected a quick victory. No one knew where they were. "Jake, if we destroy this fleet completely, then the Hegemony won't know what happened here," she announced. "They will just think these ships disappeared during a routine operation." This gave Sullivan an idea that was both brilliant and completely insane. If no aliens survived to report back, then the Hegemony would never learn about human fighting capabilities. Other human colonies would still have the advantage of surprise when the next alien fleet arrived. Davis understood immediately and began targeting the communication arrays on the remaining ships. They needed to prevent any transmission from reaching Hegemony space before they finished their work. The stolen fighter became a ghost that struck without warning and disappeared before the aliens could respond.